Hello everyone, today we're taking a look at the Runcam Thumb Pro. And Pro doesn't mean just a bigger lens, it's actually got several improvements inside here, which are good things as Runcam continues to evolve their thumb camera. It records in 4K and it records in all the increments of resolutions down to 1080p. No 720p, but that shouldn't be a big deal. On the back, they've added the connector with additional pins, so you can wire it up to your flight controller and control it with your radio for your stop and start recording with a toggle switch or something like that. They also have ND filters that are available for that, and we'll take a quick look at those as well. And they fixed that hatch on the back. You know, on the original thumb, the hatch would kind of just fall off. This one clicks in pretty well. See, did you hear the little snap? Snap. So the back should stay nice and secured. To my eye, looking through the gyro data, it does look like it's doing some additional gyro logging, which should be a good thing if you're interested in processing your footage through GyroFlow. If you're not familiar with GyroFlow, GyroFlow is a free video stabilization application that has kind of taken to FPV if you're not a GoPro quad flyer, so to speak. We got a few more accessories that we'll take a look at, and I've got some footage that I think, especially the nighttime footage, you're going to want to see because it didn't turn out quite like I thought it would. So this is the wiring harness that the thumb comes with, and I mentioned the additional wires. I did not use those. Actually, it causes me a bit of confusion, but if you want to control, as I said, by wiring to your flight controller and using your radio to control the camera, perfectly welcome to wire that fully up. Also, they did improve their mount. You might remember on the original thumb, the mount was super flimsy, and a lot of us were having difficulties getting some stable footage, even when we had a nice stable quad. Of course, we got the quad side of that mount as well, and then we've got some mounting screws. Actually, more than we should need in the short run. The Thumb Pro weighs 16.5 grams. If you add the included mount, it comes to almost 20 grams. And if you use the quad side mount, it comes to almost 21.25 grams. If we add the mount that goes on the drone, well, we get 21.5 grams, or just about. If we add the wiring harness as well as a screw and nut to go on there, we're getting 22.65 grams. Okay, we're gonna do some sample flying here. Some of you might recognize this path, had a fateful flight to it in a video not too long ago. I'm not flying this on a traditional micro if you're expecting that from a guy who kind of set his niche and enjoys micros quite a bit. This is the Foxeer FoxWhoop. My review will be coming soon. If you follow the channel, you know when someone says something is unbreakable or super durable. I'm going to give that a good test, so we'll see how that lives up. Stay tuned for that video. So this is relatively late in the evening. It's almost 7 o'clock. The sun is kind of low. I think I've heard to this hour kind of referred to as the golden hour. So presumably this is the best time, right, for capturing your footage. The quad that I've got it on, and the purpose and why I've got it on this quad, is because you want to see the camera. You don't want to see the camera shaking about. I wanted to use a fairly good and smooth flying quad. So the Foxeer FoxWhoop, that's part of the review I can spoil, is that, hey, you know, it flies nice and smooth. Here we got the Runcam thumb, and this has not been processed through GyroFlow. Something to note about GyroFlow is it doesn't have a lens profile yet for the Runcam Thumb Pro, but I'm sure it's only a matter of, you know, a few people who use GyroFlow getting their hands on that before we have multiple lens profiles that come out, and then you can tinker and pick those. I did test GyroFlow with the gyro data, and it does look like it works appropriately. So we've got about 1.5 minutes of the footage. You've gotten to see it in sun and shadows, flying into the sun directly, out of the sun into shadows. I should have a pretty good idea of the sensor and the lens and how it records. This is 4K 30 frames per second, by the way. Let's go ahead and do just a 1080, 120 frames per second. Of course, this is going to all be rendered in 4K, so you'll be looking at this 1080p sample in 4K. Here we go mid-flight as we head around to the backyard. You can see the landscaping equipment is out, and they're actually done with the ground. We'll be getting sod laid next week, and so the backyard will be pretty much wet constantly for the next 3 weeks. Trying to get that sod to take hold in the dog days of summer here when we're having 102 to 106 102 to 106 degree days. But this is 1080p at 120 frames per second. 120 frames per second might give you that opportunity to use some slow-mo in your editing or something like that. And I did record in 2.7K, but I don't think it's really worth a sample. Kind of go with the high end and the low end, and what is in between we should be pretty satisfied with in my estimation. I could be wrong. Let me know. I'm sure you will. Let me know if I'm wrong on that. But this flight, it was about the same time at night. You know, it's probably within 10 to 15 minutes of the flight that I already showed you. And that was something I always try to do when it comes to cameras, is if I'm going to have multiple flights and change settings, that they should come within a fairly short window. That way we don't have dramatic lighting changes. Of course, if we've got clouds and clouds come and go with the wind, not so much I can control about that. Let's move on to the nighttime footage that I did. So I turned on some of the lights in the outdoor space out back here, and this is not nearly as dark as this presents, and that is why I have got the DJI footage in the lower left-hand corner of your screen, so that you can see that I wasn't flying blind. It's just that this camera, when it gets pretty dark, doesn't do great. That's the one area where I wished it did a little bit better, because obviously you can see, even in a small window, the DJI camera did a nice job of allowing me to fly the space. This is about 25 minutes after sunset. I was kind of hoping I could get some 1080p 120 frames per second footage of the outdoor space. By the way, the countertops will be done in about a week, and then they'll be installed, and then we can take all the grill equipment and stuff and stick that out there, so we'll be real close to being done. TV cabinet, some touching things that Chad will come back and finish up after the landscaping is all done, and we've got everything else taken care of. So really coming along, really excited. I did turn on the pool lights that are actually only on one side, because I wanted to see how that looked in the footage as well. And I think this one is called Disco. It's not something I think I would ever use, because it kind of just flashes different colors. You know, it does like a second and a half, and it flashes a new color and a new color and a new color. I guess it could be fun if the kids were having a party or something, you know, having friends over. I guess that I wouldn't necessarily use it. I would just turn on regular old lights, showing my age a touch. But yeah, this isn't as bright as or usable as I had hoped it would be at this time of the evening. So there you go. Should give you a pretty good sample of what I experienced and what you should expect in obtaining your own Runcam Thumb Pro. So controlling the camera is actually very, very simple. You don't have to set up Wi-Fi or pair it over Bluetooth or anything like that. You just download the Runcam app. You make sure you have the Runcam Thumb Pro selected. And then we do the QR configuration, and these are our options. You know, we've got high, medium, low. We've got loop recording, power on, auto recording, and then we have the last setting that I used there, 1080p, 120 frames per second, and a little more of the stats here, 4K, 2K, 1440p, and then two 1080s. So unless you need the absolute highest, not only resolution or image quality, such as a GoPro or a Komodo Red, a $10,000 camera, yeah, I think for most of us, hobbyists, the little Runcam Thumb Pro will work out quite well. The additional things, we've got volume for FPV. I played a little bit of that there at the end between the transition here, but I did take that volume level down quite a bit for you. You've also got normal, which I did not test because, well, it's not going to sound good. It's kind of an odd muted sound. Shutter, we have all these different options on the shutter. ISO, we have these options for ISO. Color styles, which is fairly interesting. We just have normal and flat. Of course, with flat, you would do color grading through your video editing process, so you could get the color and the look that you were looking for, of course. You've got color distortion correction, distortion correction. So if you are sensitive to fisheye, or maybe you don't like that sort of thing, you can turn that on, and then you generate the QR code. And this gives you some steps. It tells you how this works, and then you hit the next button, and you turn the camera on. Double click the power button to switch to the QR code parameter adjustment mode. And it's pretty quick, you know, double click. And then the camera, you point the camera at the QR code, and it will automatically switch back to standby mode after successful configuration. So you just kind of stick this in front of the camera, and then the light changes, and then when it goes, well, the light's already changed because you've double clicked it, and then when it goes back to the standard red light, you've got the new settings. Push the button to, or flip the switch on your radio to start the recording. Pretty dead simple, and it works pretty well. You know, I did it a bunch of times. So there we are at the Runcam Thumb Pro, and like I said, I think unless you are actually looking to do something where you're doing a real estate fly-through for someone where you need the best image quality and the best, you know, what we can afford in best, of course. You know, somebody might be looking for a GoPro Hero 9 or 10 or what have you. But this, for most of us, especially being the weight it is, it's going to work for a lot of different sort of micros. And I know some of you are probably thinking, dang it, I just bought the Thumb, and now they come out with the Thumb Pro. You might be sensing a little bit of buyer's remorse. Well, this one comes in at a little bit more of a price point, $80 for this one. It comes in at a little bit more of a weight issue. So if you're flying it around on a Whoop or an ultralight micro, you might be good where you're at. And I heard some people picked it up on Amazon Prime, the original Thumb, that is. So hopefully you don't have your buyer's remorse. But if you want to add one, because I've heard some people say that the Thumb at its price was disposable, so you weren't afraid to break it. Maybe you want something with a little bit higher resolution, a little bit more image quality to it, and some additional options, as well as some better gyro flow capabilities. If you do, I'll have links down in the video description to resellers who are selling the Runcam Thumb Pro. If you have any comments, questions, suggestions, or otherwise, please let me know in the comments section below. I appreciate your time, and thanks for watching.